Pliny the Elder, a man of many talents and interests, lived a life of curiosity and discovery enveloped by mystery. It's been close to 2,000 years since his death, but his birth, death, resting place, and properties have left historians scratching their heads in mystery. How did Pliny the Elder die? And did scientists finally discover Pliny the Elder's villa near Pompeii? Let's take a trip to Rome as we explore the life and legacy of one of the most famous writers and explorers of ancient Rome, known as Pliny the Elder. If he were immortal, Pliny would be celebrating his 2001st birthday this year. How did we know? While that's one of the mysteries of Pliny's life, we can infer the year 23 CE because his nephew reported how old he was when he died. Even after so many years, you would definitely still argue with one or two people about his birth date. However, one fact is that Pliny was the son of an equestrian, Gaius Plinius Caesar, and his wife, Marcella. Of course, neither the younger nor the elder Pliny mention the names. The ultimate source is a fragmentary inscription found in a field in Verona and recorded by the 16th century Augustinian friar Onofrio Panvino. The form is an elegy, and the most commonly accepted reconstruction reads in English, Plinius Secundus Augur ordered this to be made as a testament to his father Celer and his mother, Grania Marcella. The truth is that the actual words are fragmentary, which means the reading of the inscription depends on the reconstruction. Although in every case, the names come through, whether he was an augur and whether his mother was named Grania Marcella are less certain. However, according to Jean Ardouin, a French priest who is well known for his editions of ancient authors, he read a statement from an ancient unknown source that states Pliny was from Verona and that his parents were Celer and Marcella. No one knows how the inscription got to Verona, but it could have arrived by dispersal of property from Pliny the Younger's estate at Colle Plinio, north of Città di Castello, identified with certainty by his initials in the roof tiles. There, Pliny the Younger kept statues of his ancestors by which we can verify a few details today. According to certain historians, Pliny the Elder was born at Como, not at Verona, and this can be confirmed by a statue of Pliny on the facade of the Como Cathedral, which celebrates him as a native son. Another misconception may have been Pliny the Elder's relationship with Pliny the Younger. While many believed or have mistaken Pliny the Younger for Pliny the Elder's son, he was the son of Plinia, Pliny the Elder's only known sister. This means Pliny the Younger was only his nephew. However, their relationship may have extended far and beyond the uncle-nephew relationship, as Pliny the Younger seemed to know a lot about his uncle. Pliny the Elder did not marry and had no children. In his will, he adopted his nephew, which entitled the latter to inherit the entire estate. The type of adoption is called a testamental adoption, which includes a name change. Pliny the Elder, who was a member of the Plinia gens, did not take his father's cognomen, Celer, but assumed his own, Secundus, which is why his name is Gaius Plinius Secundus. Since Pliny the Younger was adopted, he has taken the same cognomen. However, Roman jurisprudence recognizes no such category of adoption, regardless, for at least some of the time. Pliny the Elder resided in the same house in Misenum with his sister and nephew after Plinia's husband died. And after Pliny the Elder's death, Pliny the Younger inherited combined estates, which made him so wealthy that he could found a school and a library, endow a fund to feed the women and children of Como, and own numerous estates around Rome and Lake Como. He also did his best to enrich some of his friends as a personal favor. His close relationship with Pliny the Elder made him know a lot about him, and thanks to his letters, we know more about Pliny the Elder. In one of his letters to Tacitus, Pliny the Younger details how his uncle's breakfasts would be light and simple, following the customs of their forefathers, showing that Pliny the Elder was a good Roman, who maintained the customs of the great Roman forefathers, a statement that would have pleased Tacitus. While Pliny the Elder was known for writing many books, he was also a trusted military man. If it was all about Pliny's father, he would have probably just been a lawmaker, as he took Pliny to Rome to be educated in lawmaking. However, in 46 AD, at about age 23, Pliny entered the army as a junior officer, as was the custom for young men of equestrian rank. While he was there, he showed great interest in Roman literature which attracted the attention and friendship of other men of letters in the higher ranks, with whom he formed lasting friendships. Later, these friendships assisted his entry into the upper echelons of the state. However, he was trusted for his knowledge and ability as well. He started as a prefectus cohortus, a commander of a cohort under Gnaeus Domitius Corbulo, who himself was a writer, although his works did not survive. In 47 AD, he took part in the Roman conquest of the Chauci and the construction of the canal between the rivers Maas and Rhine, but that was not the end of his journey. At some uncertain date, Pliny was transferred to the command of Germania Superior under Publius Pomponius Secundus, with a promotion to military tribune. This was a staff position, with duties assigned by the district commander. Although Pliny's assignments are not clear, he must have participated in the campaign against the Chatti of 50 AD, at age 27, in his 4th year of service. At another uncertain date, Pliny was transferred back to Germania Inferior, and this time he was promoted to Prefectus Alae, meaning commander of a wing, responsible for a cavalry battalion of about 480 men. There, Pliny spent the rest of his military service. According to Pliny the Younger, during this period, his uncle wrote his first book perhaps in winter quarters when more spare time was available. Although this book did not survive, a part of it was revealed in other books showing it was about the use of missiles on horseback. During this same period, he also dreamed that the spirit of the terrific Drusus Nero begged him to save his memory from oblivion. The dream prompted Pliny to begin forthwith a history of all the wars between the Romans and the Germans, which he did not complete for some years. At the end of 69 AD, after a year of civil war consequent on the death of Nero, Vespasian, a successful general, became the emperor. Like Pliny, he had come from the equestrian class, rising through the ranks of the army and public offices while defeating the other contenders for the highest office. His main tasks were to re-establish peace under imperial control and to place the economy on a sound footing. To do that, he needed all the loyalty and assistance he could get in the world. And of course, Pliny, who was trusted without question, was recommended by Vespasian's son Titus. Immediately, Pliny was put to work and was kept in a continuous succession of the most distinguished prokuratorships. That was a solid one, as a procurator was generally a governor of an imperial province. Throughout the latter stages of Pliny's life, he maintained good relations with Emperor Vespasian, as confirmed by the first line of Pliny the Younger's letter to Tacitus. Ante lucem ibat ad Vespasianum imperatorem, nam ille quoque noctibus utebatur, dende ad officium sibi delegatum, meaning, before dawn, he was going to Emperor Vespasian, for he also made use of the night. Then he did the other duties assigned to him. In this passage, Pliny the Younger also mentions to Tacitus that his uncle was ever an academic, one who was always working, reading, and writing. However, as much as he could work, he also was a very ready sleeper, sometimes dropping off in the middle of his studies and then waking up again. With so much dedication and commitment, Pliny became that notable author. While Pliny was interested in writing, during Nero's reign of terror, he avoided working on any writing that would attract attention to himself. His works on oratory in the last years of Nero's reign focused on form rather than on content. However, he began working on content again, probably after Vespasian's rule began in 69 AD, when the terror clearly was over and would not be resumed. While everything seemed to go well at first, Vespasian soon suppressed the philosophers in Rome, but not Pliny, because he represented something new in Rome, an encyclopedist. The next work of Pliny after the above-mentioned was Bella Germaniae, where Pliny completed the history that Aufidius Bassus left unfinished. Pliny's continuation of Bassus's history was one of the authorities, followed by Suetonius and Plutarch. He is also cited by Tacitus concerning the loyalty of Burrus, commander of the Praetorian Guard, whom Nero removed for disloyalty. Tacitus portrays parts of Pliny's view of the Pisonian conspiracy to kill Nero and make Piso emperor as absurd, also mentioning that he could not decide whether Pliny's account or that of Messala was more accurate concerning some of the details of the year of the four emperors. Pliny's extension of Bassus extended at least from the reign of Nero to that of Vespasian. However, Pliny knew he wrote something controversial, which was why he deliberately reserved it for publication after his death. According to his nephew, Pliny's last work was the Naturalis Historia, known as Natural History in English, an encyclopedia into which he collected much of the knowledge of his time. The first encyclopedia. The Natural History is considered the first encyclopedia by some historians, as it comprised 37 books. Pliny's sources were personal experience, his own prior works, and extracts from other works, extracts that were collected most unexpectedly. While one servant read aloud, another would write the extract as dictated by Pliny. He is said to have dictated extracts while taking a bath. And during winter, when everything was cold, he furnished the copier with gloves and long sleeves, so his writing hand would not stiffen with cold. Eventually, his extract collection finally reached about 160 volumes, which Larsius Licinius, the Praetorian legate of Hispania Tarraconensis, unsuccessfully offered to purchase for 400,000 sesterces. Instead, Pliny the Elder willed the extracts to his nephew. It is, however, unknown when the composition of natural history began, but since he was really busy during the reign of Nero, it is presumed to have begun before 70 AD. However, the date of an overall composition cannot be determined, but the dates came to be assigned to different parts by philological analysis, which is the post-mortem of the scholars. As for the single publication date, the closest known event to the time when the manuscript was probably released to the public for borrowing and copying, and was probably sent to the Flavians, is the date of the dedication in the first of the 37 books. The book was dedicated to the imperator Titus, but Titus and Vespasian had the same name, Titus Flavius Vespasianus, which makes it confusing which of them he referred to. However, earlier writers hypothesized a dedication to Vespasian, while Pliny's mention of a brother in joint offices with a father, calling that father great, points certainly to Titus. Pliny also says that Titus had been consul 6 times, with the first 6 consulships of Titus being 70, 72, 74, 75, 76, and 77, all conjointly with Vespasian, and the 7th was in 79. This brings the date of the dedication probably to around 77. In that year, Vespasian, who was 68 years old, had been ruling conjointly with Titus, and the title imperator does not indicate that Titus was the sole emperor, but was awarded for a military victory. Aside from minor finishing touches, the work in 37 books was, however, believed to have been completed in 77 AD. This book cannot be overemphasized, as it is one of the largest single works to have survived from the Roman Empire and was intended to cover the entire field of ancient knowledge, based on the best authorities available to Pliny. He claims to be the only Roman ever to have undertaken such a great work, which encompasses the fields of botany, zoology, astronomy, geology, and mineralogy, as well as the exploitation of those resources. It remains a standard work for the Roman period and the advances in technology and understanding of natural phenomena at the time. His discussions of some technical advances are the only sources for those inventions, such as hushing in mining technology or the use of water mills for crushing or grinding grain. This work is also the only one that describes the work of artists of the time and is a reference work for the history of art. As such, Pliny's approach to describing the work of artists informed Lorenzo Ghiberti in writing his commentaries in the 15th century, and Giorgio Vasari, who wrote the celebrated lives of the most excellent painters, sculptors, and architects in 1550. Being recognized as the first encyclopedia doesn't mean there were no other works before it. Many ancient histories have been written before Pliny the Elder's Natural History, but scholars still recognize natural history as an encyclopedia, setting it apart from the other ancient histories. Regardless of if it was the first, it is certainly the most significant. Through natural history, Pliny the Elder gives modern experts a view into the meanings of various things from 1st century Rome in a way that no other surviving text does. Each book of natural history covers a different topic, and the work is meant to cover every topic. Given the organization of the work, it is clear that it was meant to be a reference resource. Even modern scholars will sometimes compare an unknown object mentioned in a different ancient text with the objects described by Pliny and make comparisons. Modern scholars are also able to use natural history to understand the traditions, fantasies, and prejudices in ancient Rome. This work became a model for all later encyclopedias in terms of the breadth of subject matter examined. Natural history became the only work by Pliny to have survived, and the last that he published, lacking a final revision due to his sudden and unexpected death in the 79 AD's eruption of Mount Vesuvius. At the time, Pliny was appointed Praefectus Classis in the Roman navy by Vespasian and was stationed with the fleet at Misenum. He organized and led a rescue mission, upon receiving a message from his friend Rectina, who had been left stranded in Stabiae during the eruption. Pliny boarded one of several galleys that he dispatched across the Gulf of Naples to Stabiae. But as soon as Pliny's vessel approached the shore near Herculaneum, cinders and pumice began to fall on it. The helmsman advised turning back, to which Pliny replied, "Fortune favors the bold. Steer to where Pomponianus is." Upon reaching Stabiae, they found Senator Pomponianus, but the same winds that brought them there prevented them from leaving. The group waited for the wind to abate, but they decided to leave later that evening for fear their houses would collapse. Soon, a plume of hot toxic gas engulfed them, which made them flee from the site. But while many others could survive the gas, Pliny, a corpulent man who suffered from a chronic respiratory condition, possibly asthma, died from asphyxiation caused by the toxic gases and was left behind. Upon the group's return 3 days later after the plume had dispersed, Pliny's body was found, with no apparent external injuries. 27 years later, upon a request from Tacitus, Pliny the Younger provided an account of his uncle's death. The fact that Pliny's body was found without injury supports the theory that he was killed by toxic gases. However, Suetonius wrote that Pliny approached the shore only from scientific interest, and then asked a slave to kill him to avoid heat from the volcano. And in 1859, after Jacob Bigelow summarized the information about Pliny's death contained in Pliny the Younger's letter to Tacitus, he concluded that Pliny had died from a stroke or heart disease. Would we have been able to confirm anything if his remains were found and preserved? But before we proceed, let's get into Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Pliny the Elder has long intrigued the world for generations, not only through his works, but also his life, whose facts have birthed different controversies. It started with the date of his birth, which was unknown, but attached to the unfortunate events of 79 AD, which ended up taking Pliny's life. Then it was the cause of his death that nobody knew, even his underlings who were with him at the time, due to the excess toxic gases that clouded the area at the time. Apart from these, there were also controversies about Pliny's works, including his famous first encyclopedia. But isn't it ironic that as much as Pliny wrote about everything, he never wrote about himself? However, even if he did, he wouldn't have been able to write about his death and his resting place. Till today, researchers have tried to locate where Pliny's body was buried, and also where his villa must have been in Pompeii. But recently, there's been news that scientists finally discovered Pliny the Elder's villa near Pompeii, and also separately, the skull of Pliny the Elder. Not long ago, archaeologists announced the discovery of a skull that may belong to Pliny the Elder, but the story surrounding the discovery has only been a source of continuous fascination. Back when Vesuvius erupted, Pliny was under 20 miles away. He was quite unaware that Vesuvius was a volcano, despite publishing Rome's greatest encyclopedia, The Natural History, around 2 years earlier. The eruption now slowly unfolded before Pliny's eyes from his vantage point at Misenum, near the northern tip of the Bay of Naples. As commander of the imperial fleet at Misenum, Pliny had responsibility for policing the waters of the bay. A rescue mission ensued, and a flotilla of Navy ships was launched. Although Pliny offered the then 17-year-old Pliny the Younger the chance to join the fleet, he declined, and that was how he was saved, and he lived to record the death of Pliny the Elder. Fast forward to 18 centuries, around 1900, a local landowner named Gennaro Matrone began digging on his estates in the vicinity of ancient Stabiae. There, he uncovered over 70 skeletons near one another, and they are evidently the remains of victims of the ancient eruption, left to lie where they had perished. But of all the skeletons, one corpse attracts particular attention. It was wearing a gold ring, necklace, and armbands, and the body was found in a supine position that suggests sleep, with its head supported by a pillar. A French diplomat, who has perhaps read the younger Pliny's letter, is on hand to suggest that the corpse may be that of the elder Pliny. Matrone publishes the finding in a pamphlet, but receives only derision in response. One eminent archaeologist of the day pours scorn on the identification when he said a Roman admiral would hardly be dressed like a ballet dancer. Matrone is discouraged, and the relic eventually ends up in respectable obscurity at the Museo dell'Arte Sanitaria in Rome, where it is tagged simply "Skull attributed to Pliny." A century later, the Italian military historian Flavio Russo suggested that the attribution should be settled by scientific investigation. A campaign led by La Stampa eventually raised funds for a study of the relic at the hands of a scientific team fronted by popular historian Andrea Cionci. The results, released in January 2020 at the Museo dell'Arte Sanitaria, were somewhat ambiguous. Isotopic examination of the lower jaw jaw indicated a childhood consistent with the early life spent by the elder Pliny in his North Italian hometown of Comum, the modern Como. But the ancient owner of the lower jaw was in his 30s, whereas Pliny the Elder had died in his 50s. Apart from a debate about whether the gold relics found with the corpse can or cannot represent the insignia appropriate to a Roman admiral, one important question remains. If the younger Pliny knew precisely where his uncle died, why was he content to leave the corpse unburied? The Roman horror of a body left to lie without funeral rites is well known. And also, the letters written to Tacitus about the eruption attest to a devotion by the younger towards the elder. While we can agree that the skull didn't belong to Pliny the Elder, what about the discovery of Pliny the Elder's villa? Early this year, Italian archaeologists announced the discovery of a sizable Roman villa in Bacoli, known as Bauli in ancient times, along the Bay of Naples. The city sits to the west of Naples and was famed in antiquity for being a bustling resort town that once housed a famous resident, the statesman and naturalist Pliny the Elder. Although local archaeologists have noted that it is but a hypothesis, the suggestion that this villa may be the elder Pliny's has garnered headlines across the globe. The ruins of a seafront villa, believed to be where Pliny the Elder witnessed the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, were uncovered near Naples, Italy, during an excavation to build a playground. The town matches Pliny's written descriptions, and the villa also has a view of Mount Vesuvius at only 20 miles away, making it a likely candidate. At his estate, among several others, Pliny the Elder would have entertained the Roman elite with banquets, which made archaeologists believe that it could have belonged to another wealthy Roman citizen. The remaining walls were made from soft limestone, known as tufa, that extended to the beach, and it is expected that there would have been 10 large rooms and multiple panoramic terraces. While excavations are said to go on for several months, what we do know for certain is that Pliny the Elder did reside in a villa in the area of Bacoli. However, there is admittedly no finite evidence tying the newly unearthed villa directly to Pliny the Elder. As the researchers noted, the coastline around the Bay of Naples was filled to the brim with villas side by side with little separation. The area was also not abandoned after the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD. And well into the 4th century, there were several prominent Romans, such as the statesman Symmachus, who spoke of the luxury villas that still drew the wealthy to Bauli for sunbathing, lounging, bathing, and coastal leisure. The current assertion that the newfound villa is Pliny's is based in large part on the view of Vesuvius, afforded by the villa on the promontory. This was coupled with the information in the letters of Pliny the Younger that the cloud rising from the volcano was visible. In reality, that could have been the case for any number of villas within the town, so we can't say it was Pliny's residence. Tying stories to a well-known and dramatic narrative of destruction is one way to capture the public imagination immediately. As we know, the stories surrounding Pliny and Pompeii are still alive and well in the historical world. And yet even the alleged skull of Pliny the Elder remains unauthenticated and controversial. The reality is that archaeology is often inconclusive. It is also most often tied to people whom we may not have any evidence for in the history books. Although the argument for the possible discovery of Pliny's villa may be tenuous, it is not hopeless. Archaeologists are still excavating, which means potential new finds to back up these claims may surface anytime soon. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.